I'm JJ Virgin, PhD dropout, sorry mom, turned 4-time New York Times bestselling author. Yes, I'm a certified nutrition specialist, fitness Hall of Famer, and I speak at health conferences and trainings around the globe. But I'm driven by my insatiable curiosity and love of science to keep asking questions, digging for answers, and sharing the information I uncover with as many people as I can. And that's why I created the Well Beyond 40 podcast to synthesize and simplify the science of health into actionable strategies to help you thrive. In each episode, we'll talk about what's working in the world of wellness, from personalized nutrition and healing your metabolism to healthy aging and prescriptive fitness. Join me on the journey to better health so you can love how you look and feel right now and have the energy to play full out at 100. Alrighty, I've got Dr. Molly Maloof back for the second part of our interview. Now, if you haven't listened to part one, where we talk all about stress, HRV, medtech, continuous glucose monitors, how to optimize your health, be sure to check that episode out. And this time we are going to be digging into what I'm looking at is Dr. Molly Maloof's game-changing life work, and that is all about sexual health, sexual fitness, and how to optimize your sex life. And it all comes through her new company, which is called Adamo Biosciences, that she has a mission to reveal that love is measurable, modifiable, and a key factor in healing that unlocks the capacity for connection and self-actualization with everyone. This is super groundbreaking work. I am really excited about this and excited to take the course myself with my hubby. So what she's talked about in this interview is that really our understanding and work in sexual health hasn't really changed since Masters and Johnson. And so she has been working with some of the top luminaries out there to create a new sex therapy designed to improve intimacy, resolve sexual dysfunction, enhance pleasure, strengthen relationships, and resolve attachment dysfunction. So we are going to be digging into that. We're going to be digging into what is sexual health, what is sexual fitness, how do you know if you have sexual dysfunction, and more importantly, what all can you do about that? So stay with me. I will be right back with Dr. Molly Maloof.
I mentioned the whole story about Stanford and being like, oh my gosh, human relationships are really important. And yet, and actually, if you actually do the research, there's actually some statistics out there that, the more orgasms you have, the longer you live. So I'm a big believer that we are not looking at sexuality as a wholesome thing. We're looking at it as like a taboo thing or a thing that has problems that need fixing. And I love this concept of creating sexual fitness, which is you might be out of shape right now, but you could actually be in phenomenal shape if you just had a program to follow to actually improve this facet of our lives that we often just ignore or we don't talk about. And as somebody who has dealt with sexual trauma herself and overcome it, part of the reason why I founded this company was because I was using MDMA with a partner in my early 30s and accidentally healed a bunch of sexual dysfunction, which I'm not claiming MDMA does, but in my case, I had a bunch of unresolved trauma. And MAPS is coming along trying to approve MDMA for PTSD. And I looked at the diagnosis of PTSD and I said, this is weird. I didn't have this criteria. So what did I have? And so I dug really into the research and I was like, whoa, for women who've had sexual trauma, about 30% will end up with PTSD, but 60 to 80% will end up with sexual dysfunction. And I was like, I want to build a company around solving this problem. So initially, we were a pharmaceutical company developing an MDMA alternative, but quickly I realized I didn't want to run a pharmaceutical company because it's crazy. And so I still wanted to keep with the mission. So we decided to build a new sex therapy. And in the process of developing the sex therapy, which is basically, it's not designed in particular for trauma, but it's very trauma informed. So one of the things that we really try to subscribe to is this concept of you're not broken, you don't need fixing. So this program is really about optimizing your sexual function and realizing that in the process, you can overcome dysfunction. So a lot of people just don't even understand their anatomy. So we've made videos on teaching people actually what does your pleasure anatomy look like. The female clitoris wasn't mapped properly until 2005 in anatomical textbooks. So we've been operating with this whole black box of lack of knowledge, while men have had all of these drugs approved, by the way, for erectile dysfunction. which, by the way, most of them go off in 3 years of taking it because most erectile dysfunction is psychological, not biological. And so I wanted to build a sex therapy that could be able to help heterosexual people, homosexual people, gay, straight, trans, you name it. It could help anybody. And the reason why we decided to develop a new sex therapy was because it hadn't been reinvented since Masters and Johnson in the 60s. And one of the most primary sex therapies is sensate therapy, which is a very effective therapy for certain cases. It's basically don't have sex for a month, use mindfulness-based sensual touch, reconnect with your partner by taking sex off the table. This is great, and sometimes it doesn't work. So we wanted to figure out what about those cases where this thing doesn't work? And we realized that there was no sex therapy that actually addressed sex itself. It was all about everything before sex. And so we decided we would create a new paradigm shift in teaching people how to have a different kind of interaction with their partners than what we typically see in porn, which is unfortunately not particularly pleasurable for most women because women take about 20 minutes to get fully aroused. Most women and men, and there are spontaneously aroused women, but that's about 20% of women, not 80%. So we designed a therapeutic paradigm shift. We're teaching people about how to have more pleasurable, more satisfying, more connected sex that addresses all facets of human love, which is the sex drive, the romantic love drive, and the drive to attach. So we actually designed this program around the science of love, which my advisors are like luminaries in, and we're testing it in our first clinical study in January. We are actually launching it as like a live program because I believe it works because I've already learned it. And honestly, I thought that my sex life was great and that I was like 9 out of 10 in like skill sets. I realized that I was probably more like 6 out of 10 until I did this program. I had a lot of room for improvement. And this is the thing about sexual fitness is like we are not looking at physical fitness the same ways we're not looking at sexual fitness as a thing. We're looking at it as like I go to the doctor if I have a problem, but if as long as I'm having a normal sex life, then like normal sex life, then nothing's wrong. But if you actually pull women in the world and ask them what makes great sex, they say it doesn't hurt. And this
Oh
is
my gosh.
when I realized that this was like the baseline of what women are dealing with, I realized, whoa, we actually have a much bigger product on our hands than just helping people with dysfunction, which is about 30% of women. There's a whole 70% of women that don't realize that they could be having better sex, more connected sex, and sex that creates a stronger bond between partners. And so, this is what the Adama method is about. I can go into more detail if you have questions.
Questions. I have like a page full of questions because it's so interesting. Like, how would someone know when you said a scale of, I thought I was a scale of 9 to 10, I was a scale of 6 to 10. I'm like, how would someone know where they are in the scale? How would someone even know if they had sexual dysfunction?
Yeah. So I spent months with researchers from Imperial College dissecting all of the different clinical measures for sexual dysfunction, sexual satisfaction, sexual communication, emotional closeness, which is a surrogate way of describing love in scientific terms. There's this scale called the inclusion of other. So like, and then there's the triangular theory of love scale, and then there's the attachment scales. So I was like, whoa, like we have this like really broad number. Well, this is why we're basically running our program because we are going to take all of these scales, run everyone through them, and show, and then we're going to create a derivative scale for the Adamo program based on the biggest measures that change. And basically, for sexual dysfunction, it's not that complicated. There's problems with arousal, which is you're not getting wet, which is like like lack of physical desire. Then there's problems with desire, which is you're not thinking like you want to have sex, but you might have arousal, which is lack of sort of mental desire. And then they lump those two, desire and arousal, into the same category. They used to be separate categories. They have the same category now. And then there's sexual pain, which is pain during intercourse, which can be superficial. It can be vulvodynia. It can be dyspareunia. It can be vaginismus, which vulvodynia is like you touch the outer vagina and there's pain. Just get near it, it's painful. Dyspareunia is when there's pain with penetration, and then vaginismus is when the vagina tightens up so much that you can't even have penetration, or if you do, it's just spasming. And then there's anorgasmia, which is situational or primary. So there's either like you've never been able to have an orgasm, or you can have an orgasm but only on your own, not with your partner. And then for men, it's pretty similar, but there's like premature ejaculation, there's erectile dysfunction, there's there's basically men also can experience pain with penetration. And I see it actually quite a lot in men in my practice where they complain to me that they have pain after intercourse in their penis, and there's like even tears. And this is the difference between friction sex versus suction sex. So friction sex is what you see in pornography, which is basically there's a lot of forceful entering and exiting of a penis and a vagina or an anus. Not the most pleasurable for a lot of women to have friction, turns out, especially if you're not fully aroused. It can be great if you're fully aroused, but a lot of women just aren't, especially if you're getting older, which is another reason why we've designed this method for all ages. Suction sex is literally changing the dynamic between the receiver and the giver so that there's an active receiver learning how to bring in a partner with their bodies, learning literally how to suck in a partner and having agency and control over what is happening during penetration. And then there's the adaptive giver, which is they're learning to attune to their partner and read their body and say, is my partner actually enjoying what I'm doing here or not? And do I need to change things up so that I can create more pleasure? And then this concept of suction was pioneered by Erin Michael, who's a phenomenal sex therapist, and Saida Desolé, who's his partner, who I believe this is the next Masters and Johnson because they are the most innovative people I found in sexual health. And basically, what they've discovered was that you can teach people how to have connected sex that creates suction during the sexual experience so that there's full contact between the two bodies so that instead of an in and out motion, it's the hips are moving in unison. So there's more contact inside the body. So you're getting more pleasure. And if you have any vaginal atrophy as you're getting older, it's a lot more pleasurable for a woman who's going through menopause or through perimenopause who might have struggled with friction-based sex. And so, we're really excited to be studying this because this is basically a different way of teaching people a different way of experiencing sexual contact. And the funny thing is that I learned the method in a workshop without any sex at all. It was just hip movements and just body attunement and just embodied consent. And I brought my gay guy friend with me to be my partner during the workshop. And the funny thing is we obviously there was no sexual contact at all, but there was just learning different exercises and movements. And we left this program like best friends and like really attached to each other. And I was like, this is really weird. Like we're like really close. We're like calling each other every weekend and like catching up regularly and texting each other. So we designed this method for creating stronger bonds. So one of the disclaimers of our program, we don't recommend this for people who are about to get divorced. We don't recommend this for people who have any violence in their relationship. We don't recommend this for people who are early in the relationship because you may end up bonded to this person in a deeper way after this program. And we don't want people to be bonded who don't want to be bonded, especially people who might be violent with one another, or if they're just like getting to know each other, maybe this is not the ideal program. We really want to ensure that people would recognize that like one of the side effects of this program is feeling a lot more love for your partner and a lot more attachment. It's not just the sexual piece. It's like we literally designed this method for addressing because the word adamo means to fall in love in Latin. Basically, I want to take a scientific approach to creating love between partners through a therapeutic method.
And how would you be able to measure, like, first of all, the program, like, is it online? Is it in person? How's it delivered?
Online.
And then, is there, after the fact, is it a subjective scale? Like, do you check oxytocin levels? Like, how do you test hormone levels? Like, does testosterone go up? Like, what happens?
So this is our first program we're launching, and we're talking to epigenetic companies and also like wearable technology companies to during our second cohort to actually add more measure empirical measures. But right now, what we're currently using is like standardized clinical subjective measures. And so, for example, inclusion of other is like a scale of two circles, and it's like if two people completely separated is over here and two people like codependent is completely overlapped, we're trying to see like how much does a person's inclusion of other change. So that's like one of the better measures of love in modern research science. And then there's the triangular theory of love, which is about passion, commitment, and emotional closeness, right? So it's basically like intimacy. So there's emotional intimacy, right? Which is what the emotional closeness scale is measuring. And then there's commitment, which is measuring like how committed are you to a person. And passion is like how much do you desire this person. And then there's different attachment scales, which we're using that are measuring like avoidant, secure, and anxious attachment patterns. And then sexual dysfunction is measuring for men and women, the things I discussed earlier. And then sexual satisfaction is a scale for measuring like all the different aspects of being satisfied with your sexual experience. So we're starting with these scales because they're standardized and we want to publish white papers on this in reputable medical journals. But eventually what we really want to do is like take a derivative of all these scales and create like the Adamo scale that can be like the measures that we know are consistently changing in these different individuals.
Wow. And would this work with someone who had trauma, or do they need to do something beyond this first?
One of the things that we do in our screening is if somebody has had recent sexual trauma, we would recommend that you get pretty much mainstream trauma care. So like EMDR, somatic experiencing, if you need psychotherapy, obviously like the acute approach to trauma is like we don't want you to come into this program with a highly dysregulated nervous system because this program is a somatic therapy. So I do think it would help regulate a person's nervous system, but I think if someone's dealt with an acute trauma, there's a certain period of time where you need to like work with a team of professionals, which I never got because I didn't even know that was available in my early 20s. But it's important to like do a certain amount of acute care. Now, if somebody has active PTSD, the reason why we've designed this method as an integration program is we want it to work alongside mainstream trauma programs, such as like, these existing things. So if someone's had PTSD for a long time, it's not going to bar them from the program, but we definitely want you to still have, we don't want you to use this as a replacement for existing standard of care because it is a new program and it's just being launched. We are actually in talks with some organizations in the military to develop programs for military sexual trauma. So we are likely going to be launching a very targeted program for like pretty serious sexual trauma in the near future. It's something that I've been passionate about for a long time, and the military is like a big source. I mean, it's clearly got a problem in this space, and they actually have resources to solve these problems. But this first program was designed to be as direct to consumer as possible, or ideally marketed through existing therapists. So we're training psychotherapists, sex therapists, marriage and family therapy counselors, because we want this to be just in physicians, and we want this to be ideally distributed or people have a physician or therapist to work with. Right now, the first program that's launching is going to be led by Aaron and Seda, who are the founders. Eventually, this program will be an evergreen program that you can basically have a therapist available to you, which will be working with our company, and you can just text them questions you have and have someone to work with. But we wanted it to be a safe enough program that somebody could go through on their own and not feel not ba- basically we wouldn't put anybody in danger with this program. Um, as we build out more programs specific around trauma, we'll want these programs delivered by like therapists likely. But I'm a big believer that the healer is really inside you, and they're the same pathways that produce pain in the body also can produce pleasure. So I do believe that like a lot of this work is best done alongside therapists, which is why we want to work with therapists to distribute it. But because our method is, I think, so safe, eventually, if people want to take it as an evergreen program and go in a self-guided way, they'll be able to do that too.
Wow. And first of all, how common is sexual trauma? Because it's really common, isn't it?
Okay, so the CDC says that it's 1 in 5 women are raped, 1 in 4 are abused as children, and 1 in 3 are assaulted. And I actually think the numbers are probably double because since I started this company, one of the biggest revelations, I honestly starting this company, like pretty much anything that needed to be healed left over around this trauma, like was literally the thing that really got me fully healed was dropping all shame. And when I started talking to women about this company and I started talking to investors, and women would just start sharing their stories or their sisters or their aunts, and it was just story after story after story. Women would open up to me and I would just be like, there's not a single woman I know in this world who's not been somehow affected by some form of trauma or assault or experience that was really negative sexually. I really think it's the baseline of our society that versus like the like it's the research suggests that we are actually have it better off than the rest of the world. That like a lot of countries that are highly patriarchal have much higher rates of sexual trauma. Epidemiologically speaking, this is just what people are gathering through survey data. I think because Americans are so much more aware of these problems because of the movement of Me Too and because of just the general way society is going, I think there's a lot more people reporting it than in the past. Um, it's a lot more common in men than I realized as well. Like I've dealt with a number of men in my practice that have confessed to me their experiences with trauma, especially in children. So I think men don't report it as much. I spoke to a lot of gay men and they have a very different perspective on trauma. They really don't see it. They don't see like they there's a choice in that community I found to not see sexual trauma as trauma. Like and there's something about the masculine identity that doesn't want to identify with trauma, which is fine. And I'm not going to say there's a right or wrong. And then I think there's also a very big difference between assault and trauma. And like a lot of people don't know the difference between these things, right? And so there's just this is a very taboo area to be talking about. But the reason why I'm out there talking about it is because the more that we just bring it to the surface, the less shame we will carry. And the more we can all drop shame, that is like one of the best ways to heal is to like when you no longer feel any like sense of shame around it, there's a free feeling you get. You're like, oh, so now I can actually explore all this because I don't have anything to feel bad about anymore because that shouldn't have ever happened in the first place. The problem I see is that there's a lot of people holding it in and not talking about it and not exploring paths of healing, and they're suffering unnecessarily, and their nervous systems are just wired to be tense all the time. And I mean, that's sort of like hardening of our tissues is from contraction. And that contraction comes from just like wanting to protect ourselves over and over and again and feeling unsafe. And I'm just such a believer in anything you can do to create a sense of safety around you, whether it be your community, whether it be through working with a trauma therapist, whether it be exploring your sexuality in a clinical program, working with, a sex coach, working with sex therapists, like, anything you can do to just like create some space around this so that you can explore and not feel shame and feel a sense of pleasure and excitement. It's one of the most phenomenal things you can do for your health. And it's changed my life dramatically.
I think that most people, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself on the safety thing, have no idea even what, like until recently, I had no idea that I didn't feel safe until I realized what I really felt safe for the first time in my entire life at like, it took till 55 to feel safe. Imagine, where the entire time you're like in high alert situation. So, do you think, like, I'm hearing all of this and I'm really excited about what's happening in mental health? Now, I'm adopted. They say about adopted kids, they either are like super overachievers or they're like in a ditch somewhere. And I have a brother who's profoundly schizophrenic, an adopted brother, raised in the, I think, typical household back then with a very alcoholic father and a checked out mom and all of that. And I look at now what we're starting to do with trauma and MDMA and ketamine and these types of things. And I think it is, and psilocybin, I think it's the most exciting stuff ever. I know there's going to be all sorts of, craziness around it, but this sounds like this program and then working with a trauma therapist and be able to do like what you talked about, doing some MDMA.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest drivers of sexual dysfunction, psychosomatic sexual dysfunction, are relationship problems, mood disorders, and trauma. And MDMA is being studied for trauma. Psilocybin is being studied for treatment-resistant depression, and it's far better for sexual health than SSRIs. Tommaso Barba is a scientist working with me who's published a paper on the different effects of psilocybin versus SSRIs on depression and sexual function. So there's real research coming out around the fact that this may be a safer path to healing. Potentially, we don't know yet. We're getting there. And then relationship issues. Like, believe it or not, there's actually a bunch of doctors in California that are using ketamine for couples therapy. And I think that MDMA will eventually be approved potentially. I mean, the thing is, there's no diagnostic code for couples not getting along. So it's going to be tricky to see how we get that covered, but off-label use potentially might be available. There's a lot of underground shamans and doctors using MDMA for couples. It was actually given to 500,000 people legally before it was banned, and by the DEA, and it was largely being used in couples contexts. So I think that we're like I'm a huge believer in psychedelic medicine. It's changed my life dramatically, and I'm just as much of a critic of the problems of the Wild West that it is right now. That and I've seen so many people have bad experiences with working with what they think is like a
It's
world-class shaman
a shaman. Like I was like,
actually is like a complete psychopath and who's like totally
right.
inexperienced, has no idea what they're doing. So I tell people the most important thing, if you're going to even consider exploring psychedelics, choose your shaman like you would your neurosurgeon, because you're doing psychic brain surgery. And so you really do not want to haphazardly take these medicines. There are some phenomenal resources on websites like Psychedelic Support, Influence. You can get, if you're a physician out there and you want to get educated, like take these courses. Like there's CME credit you can get. I got CME credit at the MAPS conference this year for psychedelic education. So the world is changing, but we all as physicians and therapists and health coaches and healers have a responsibility to educate people that these are double-edged swords. They can heal people and they can hurt people. And if used properly, they are phenomenal medicines. If used improperly, they can lead to lasting damage. So I always add a major disclaimer because I've never had a bad trip, but I've been incredibly careful with these medicines. And I'm at a place in my life where the next frontier is like you can get to these places on your own without any medicine at
That's the
all.
Dr. Joe
So
Dispenza thing. It's
this
like,
is
okay,
yeah.
you know,
So meditation is the best medicine. And there's, if you like, you can get the same outcomes from intensive meditation, practice. And you can create, but meditation is it has some risks too. So people go to meditation retreats and sometimes have psychotic breaks. So I'm always about start slow, start low, go slow, titrate up. Be really careful with anything you're doing to change your mind and your consciousness. And always stay grounded with your family and your community. Always stay grounded with nature. Always stay grounded with your daily practices, your health habits, and be very, very careful with adding consciousness altering practices to your life and just slowly, slowly expand from a place of deep safety and reverence.
I love it. Okay, so we've gone all over the place. What I want
Yeah.
to make sure of, I'm going to get all of the different things you talked about into the show notes. I'm going to put the show
Cool.
notes at jjvirgin.com/spark factor. I know you have an HRV optimization guide. We'll put the book in. You mentioned
Yeah.
some different links that we'll pull up and put here too. Is this course available? Like, can people buy it yet, or is it still in the beta testing?
You can sign up at livingadamo.com. We start the third week of January. So I don't know when this is launching, but we're still recruiting people to the program
Is that
and it'll
living or loving Adamo? Living?
Living Adamo.
Okay, ADAMO.
Yes.
I know as you're talking, I'm like, I am so running down and telling my husband about this.
Oh, I'd love to have you.
Well, here's the thing, like, you know, I believe the two things I love in life are marketing and health. Like those are my two favorite things,
Yeah.
and my dogs, my husband, and my kids. And one of the things we always teach in business is strengthen your strengths. Like if you've
Yeah.
got a weakness, hire the weakness.
Yes.
Like I'm not good at cleaning. I hire for that, right? And I don't want to
Yep.
get good at it. That's going to always be a
Yeah.
weakness. It will remain there. But you look at something and go, I finally met the love of my life at 52, and
Oh,
he is my perfect human. He is like absolutely the yin to my yang. Like
oh,
it is so effortless and easy. It's crazy. And which is great because I would always be the runner. If a relationship went sideways, I was the first to run out. Like I'm out of here.
that was me.
So
That was
yep,
me for
see ya.
sure.
Like that. What is it? The avoidant personality. Like I'm out, man. Game out.
Yep.
So
Totally.
so really, when you have that kind of relationship, you look at you. I'm always looking at what's the next level. How do we go deeper? How do we get closer? So this is great.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. I love your work. I think we just identified like 3 more books that have to come out.
Yep.
But this really, like, this is game-changing life work that can change the planet. Wow.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Be sure to join me next time for more tools, tips, and techniques you can incorporate into everyday life to ensure you look and feel great, and more importantly, that you're built to last. And check me out on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and my website, jjvirgin.com. And make sure to follow my podcast so you don't miss a single episode at subscribetojj.com. See you next time. Hey, JJ here. And just a reminder that the Well Beyond 40 podcast offers health, wellness, fitness, and nutritional information that's designed for educational and entertainment purposes only. You should not rely on this information as a substitute for, nor does it replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you have any concerns or questions about your health, you should always consult with a physician or other healthcare professional. Make sure that you do not disregard, avoid, or delay obtaining medical or health-related advice from your healthcare professional because of something you may have heard on the show or read in our show notes. The use of any information provided on the show is solely at your own risk.